Hey, good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Hartshey. I'm the CEO of RevCycle Partners. I'd like to thank everyone for taking some time to join us for the webinar today. Before we get started, just want to go over a few logistics. First of all, everyone is muted just to keep the noise down. There is a questions panel that you should be able to find on your GoToWebinar panel. Feel free to enter questions there along the way. We will have a Q&A session at the end, so feel free to add questions as we go. We are recording the webinar, so if you need to cut out a bit early or if you want to share a link to it, you'll all get emailed a copy or a link to the recording after we're done. Just as an expectation, this will probably be around 30 minutes plus or minus. But that's our intent is to try and get done and do some Q&A around 30 minutes or so. And then finally, I'd like to thank RevVHR for hosting the webinar and giving us a chance to reach out and speak to their customers. We value our partnership and relationship with RevVHR very highly. And so with that, let's get started. So we talked to many practices that either have considered outsourcing their billing, but maybe have not pulled the trigger yet, and often we sense some reluctance based on kind of the unknowns or the risk of changing processes and workflow in the practice. And so our objective today is to really try and provide an overview of, I guess I'd describe as kind of the day-to-day operational aspects of what it might look like for a practice to outsource some or all of its billing tasks. We'll try and address some of the common questions and misconceptions that we hear and we see when practices are looking at the topic. We do sense and have talked to a number of practices post the COVID shutdown and reopening. A number of practices are wrestling with staffing issues, whether it's staff that can't come back or staff that has to be at home. And so the topic seems to be bubbling up a bit, and again, we thought it'd be helpful to provide kind of this kind of general overview of the outsourcing option for you. So thought we'd take a little bit different tact on the webinar today. Instead of just having one person present a bunch of slides and topics on outsourcing and the billing topic, we put together a panel and thought we'd have more of a conversational webinar where we're discussing the various topics. And so our panel today is a diverse group of RevCycle partner experts, our brain trust, if you will. They work with hundreds of practices around the topic of billing all across the country, and looking forward to letting them share their thoughts on the topic. So I thought the first thing we do is do a quick around the table introduction. I'll let each of the panelists introduce themselves. I'll start with Melissa. Introduce yourself and give a little background.
Absolutely. Hello, everyone. My name is Melissa Jacobson. I am the operations manager for RevCycle Partners. I've been with RevCycle Partners for about 1.5 years now. Prior to this position, I was the chief operating officer for a multi-location optometric practice and have been in eye care for about 13 years now. During that time, I have been in just about every role in the office, except for the optometrist, of course. I've done technician, I've been the biller, I've been the credentialer, I've been, in the optical, just about all of them. And let's see, I also hold an MBA from the University of North Florida.
Great, thanks. Amanda?
Hi, I'm Amanda Kissinger. I have been with RevCycle Partners for 5 years. I am the Billing Service Group Manager. I specialize on both Revolution EHR and non-Revolution EHR accounts. I have about 12 years of optometric billing experience, and prior to joining RevCycle Partners, I was the office manager at an optometry practice. Similar to Melissa Jacobson, jack of all trades, was in the different roles within that practice as well, other than the optical.
Great. Kathy?
Hi, I'm Kathy Springborn. I'm the startup team manager. I've been with RevCycle since it started, and is it 7 years?
Sounds
7 or
about
8
right.
years.
Yeah.
Between 7 and 8 years. I apologize.
Losing
And
count after all the years.
I know. And I have about 10 years of optical experience, and about 35 plus years of medical billing experience.
Great.
Yep.
And last but not least, John?
My name is John Kettner. I'm the credentialing and IT manager. I've been with the company since it started in 2013. Before that, I did billing for hospitals, optometries, ophthalmologists. I'm kind of a jack of all trade right now.
Sounds good. Thanks, everybody. Let's dig in and get started. The topics, I put together a list of topics trying to just give us a little agenda and structure the conversation. Let's start down this path, and if we get off topic, that's okay too, but see if we'll cover all these for the attendees. So one of the most important parts of discussions that we have with practices that are considering RevCycle services is to make sure there's a proper understanding of the responsibility that we're taking on, and as important, the responsibility that stays in the practice, trying to make sure there's alignment of expectations there. So let's start with that. Amanda, can you give us an overview of that kind of delineation of responsibility, if you will?
Sure. So with RevCycle Partners, we will actually handle the claim scrubbing. Our goal is to send that claim out clean for submission in order to have a timely turnaround. We handle the actual submissions of those claims. We also post payments from all resources, meaning the clearinghouse, individual payer portals, as well as check or credit card uploads that the office has received there in-house. While we're also actively addressing aging claims, working through rejections and any denials. Some of the key things that will continue to remain in the office, will be the actual creating and coding of the invoices with the appropriate CPT and diagnosis codes. Again, we will scrub that, making sure that that is valid and supported before sending as well. But also the office will be responsible for the submission of their standalone vision claims, such as iMed and VSP, due to those lab affiliations. And the office will continue to be responsible for the eligibility and benefits, as well as any prior authorizations and patient statements.
Sounds good. So Kathy, you are touching every new Rev customer that comes through our doors. If you had to pick or identify, kind of one or the most common misunderstanding that you run into when you start a new customer up, what would that be? Where are the misconceptions?
How to set up some of the portals that we need and the reason why. Multi-factor authentication is a huge deal in the medical world. Availability, for instance, they want to make sure you are who you are, and so that is one of the biggest things we have once we get an account started, as well as who's doing what as far as the office and RevCycle Partners, the division of ownership to which insurances.
Got it. It makes sense. So if you talked about availability and some things, another topic to address is the systems. If you think about all the systems that an in-house employee might have to touch to do the billing, It's not unexpected that we, a billing company, RevCycle, would also need access to them. So, Melissa, can you kind of go over or review the breadth of the systems that that our team needs to access for a practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So you're very right. Pretty much, if you think about the systems that you would use or one of your staff members perhaps would use to handle the billing in-house, we use many of those same um, systems and maybe a couple of additional ones. Definitely the most important that any billing service would use, the two most important are your practice management software, in this case Rev, and your clearinghouse. So we access those daily or every other day depending on the service that you're signed up for. We'll also access the individual payer portals, and the more that you can provide a billing company with, the more successful they will be in getting your claims paid faster. Those payer portals certainly often will have remits available on them, but they are also used for things like secondary claim submissions from time to time. We'll also do claim appeals on those portals. We'll, look up member IDs. We do have the ability to access some of those as a billing service. Optum, for example, is one of those that we can register an association between us and your practice as a billing service, but many of those payer portals we actually share the same login, or you set us up a user login that would be very similar to what your office uses. And then probably a communication tool. In Rev, we use the messages and the tasks to communicate with your office. If you're on a different platform, we would use an additional communication tool, but that's about it. Having a good communication system in place is probably the second most important thing in terms of the success of any billing service, though.
Got it. Let's go back. Let's maybe getting a little bit into the weeds, but Kathy had alluded to the two-factor authentication, and you had talked about sharing a login. Is there concerns from the practice side about giving us access to an account, or do they do typically practices set up new accounts for us? Is there any concerns there a practice has to be dealing with?
There should not be any concerns. We are very, very protective of your information. We don't house that in any way that could put you at any sort of risk. We will ask you to set us up user accounts or set us up with our own access, if you will, when allowed. Some of the payer portals don't really allow that, but anytime that we can, we will. And many of them are actually forcing it nowadays. Availity, I'm sure you all have seen, is moving to that two-factor across the board and is causing problems for some. But
And same on the Rev side, right? We'd have unique access to or unique
absolutely.
logins to Rev, right? Yeah, right. Okay, great.
Mhm.
So that kind of segues into the next topic we had on the list, which is security. And John's our security expert, does all our internal IT for RevCycle. I guess, John, with all the systems that Melissa talked about, it seems like a big consideration around selecting a or deciding to do outsource billing or selecting a firm is security. So what would you suggest a practice look for from an RCM provider relative to security, and maybe highlight a few specifics as you're talking about it on our policies and procedures and what we do for a practice in this area?
Sure, be happy to. So when you're looking for an RCM provider, what I would definitely look at is some of the policies they have regarding their downloads and their internet cookies. Do they delete them nightly? Do they keep them? Do they only delete them once a month? Things like that. How do they store any sensitive information? I know Melissa had mentioned that we don't really we protect the information absolutely as best as we can. Well, not all places are like that, so you'd want to make sure you know how they store any documents that they do have to download, or passwords or anything like that. And do they have any security training? Do they do a quarterly? Do they do an annual security training? You know, where do they stand on HIPAA training and other security issues that can crop up like that? For RevCycle, some of the things that we do is we do monthly security training for regarding both PHI and HIPAA, so that we're in the constant know and kind of as a reminder in the background of what's going on, and we try and beat it into our people's heads, the importance of these two things. We also use a password manager so that none of the passwords are written down. We actually don't allow the passwords to be written down. We also nightly require the employees to delete their downloads and cookies every day. And if we want to, we can actually go in and audit those to make sure that they have deleted them and deleted the downloads and cookies. If there is an off chance that we do have to download something and keep it for some reason on a computer or in the cloud or something, everything is password protected and encrypted. So even if somebody got a hold of it, they wouldn't be able to do anything with it because they wouldn't have the passwords. And then we're always constantly looking at our policies and procedures regarding security to see any place that we actually could improve. So those are just some of the things that we do.
Sounds good. And you talked about or alluded to HIPAA a couple times, and you know, I'm sure we're dealing with PHI. So I assume you'd recommend that a practice have a BAA with their RCM partner
In a
in
heartbeat.
place. Yeah, right. Sure. That was an easy question, John.
Yep. I like the easy ones.
All right, let's move on to kind of the transition. So, you know, we talked about delineation responsibility. Kathy, back to you. As you know, as manager of the startup team, your team is responsible for onboarding, you know, bringing on new customers and working through that process with them. Can you kind of describe to the folks what you know practice should expect when getting started? You know, what does that transition look like from, you know, in-house to outsourced billing?
Well, our process starts with the salesperson, Sarah, or sometimes Paul, will send a bunch of documents that we need you to look over and complete for us. But the first month, the biggest expectation is my team likes more communication, where our goal is to set up a smooth process. And we ask for a lot of cooperation from the office, which is helpful and speeds up the process to get us in that smooth account process. As long as we have what we need, we can begin on the dates that we tell you we're going to begin. We start diving into your account, looking at rejected claims, how your insurances are set up, really research how your office does things. Rejections tell us a big story. We look at all of those types of things. Sometimes if we don't get what we need to start on the date we have said we were going to start, that might get postponed a couple of days. So it's very huge. We can't start without the information that we've asked for.
What type of information are you alluding to? What
we look for the insurance logins and passwords. We have you set up us as an employee in Revolution. Those are the two biggest things.
Yeah. So when you get those things set up, is it literally a cut over the same day? You know, Monday morning we start billing and the practice stops.
Yes, if we have what we need, we will get started on that Monday morning, and we just, like I said, start diving right in. And typically, the biller sets up a 1-week call with you to say, hey, this is what we noticed you're doing. This may not be totally kosher, those kinds of things.
So I'll ask the entire group this one. We talked about, transitioning, but what advice would you guys give, given your, all the practices you've worked with? What advice would you give a practice that has decided to outsource? What are the keys to success? What would you make sure they did? Or if you were on, the practice side, managing an outsourcing firm, what are the keys to success?
I would say stay involved.
Okay.
Ask questions, let the company know what you're looking for, provide information as quickly as possible. But the biggest thing I feel is staying involved with your billing company.
And I'll second that. I think it's very important. You should remember that you are essentially hiring your billing company as an employee, if you will. And so you will want to make sure that you've got a good relationship, open communication, so that if you're experiencing growing pains, if you will, or difficulties, or you're really happy with something, that you provide that feedback, and that you also give them the opportunity to reach out to you in a timely manner if there are issues, and that'll certainly make the process smoother in the end.
And I'll add in my thoughts as well. I agree. Communication is definitely key. Open communication and frequent communication is great. But at the same point, data and information access. Just as Melissa had mentioned earlier, the more portals we have access to, the more information in the system, such as ID cards, anything that you can obtain by the patient when they're checking in, that's going to give us the resources we need to get that claim processed and paid in a timely manner.
And the more of that you can do up front, the faster it'll be more hands off for you.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Quicker to the end goal. Sounds good. Let's talk about work in AR. So, one reason or one scenario that we get involved with, when a practice calls us, is because they've looked at their AR, they're analyzing the state of their AR, and come to the conclusion that it's not a pretty sight. Maybe it's not always the situation, but often that's a reason folks talk to us. Let's maybe split it into two categories. There's the pile of old AR, the things that are greater than 120 days, greater than 180 days, and it's been out there a while and it's getting worse. And then there's the ongoing AR, where if we take on an account's ongoing billing, there's naturally claims that are they're going to age out and fall into aging buckets that we need to deal with. So, Melissa, what are maybe kind of give an overview to folks that are are in that kind of situation with a unruly AR environment. What are the types of AR projects that we get involved with, your teams dealt with in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's first important to understand what we define as ongoing AR versus existing old AR, right? So ongoing AR for us, when you start with us, we consider anything 45 days back to our start date and on forward as ongoing AR. In other words, if you started today, we would consider all AR from August 1st forward infinitely into the future as your ongoing AR. So that would be included in ongoing service. The old AR would be anything prior to August 1st. So when practices come to us, they will often ask us about both scenarios. They will have this mess, if you will, that they will ask us to clean up, but they want to keep their ongoing stuff in house. That's certainly one option you can have. There's a second option of just doing the ongoing, and they've got a staff member, maybe they themselves are going to clean up that old stuff systematically, or maybe it's a combination of both, where we do your ongoing and do a cleanup for you at the same time. And it's also important, I think, to understand that you can segment it. Maybe you want to keep vision in-house and only want us to work medical, or maybe there's a subset of payers. There's a lot of customization that can be done to pair your strengths with ours, and make sure that again, your AR gets as cleaned up and as quickly as possible in a way that's going to see the most amount of money back in the practice for you.
Sure. So I got one question in that we should answer. I apologize. We always try and avoid using terminology that not everybody understands. So I had a basic question of what is AR, and
Oh, yes.
AR is accounts receivable, and that's my mistake for not stating that up front. Basically in Rev you can get an AR report, accounts receivable report that shows how old various claims are that haven't been invoices that haven't been paid, whether it be on the insurance side or the patient side. So it's a general accounting term that we tend to. So back to the AR topic, Melissa. When your team takes on an AR project or an accounts receivable project, how do you guys prioritize the claims? Sometimes there's hundreds of claims that the practice is looking for you to work on. How do you weed through that mess?
Our first priority is always going to be to tackle the items that are close to timely filing deadlines first. Some payers have pretty short timely filing windows. United Healthcare, Humana, Blue Cross, they're all 90 days. Some are even shorter. Davis Vision, VBA, those are even shorter. So those claims will always take a priority. We'll always sort them and look for those first to make sure that if the claim was not received by the payer, that it gets in and under that deadline. We'll then look for payers that we know often require referrals or are infamous for quote unquote losing claims that have to be mailed in. We'll if we expect to have to go back to the practice to ask for a referral or something along those lines, we'll tackle those earlier in the process to again make sure that we don't run into any timely filing deadlines. And then from there, we just kind of change our priorities up from month to month, to be honest. One month we may start with vision payers, the next month we may go through alphabetically, and then the third month we may do it chronologically. We try and keep it fresh. The important part is making sure that you're looking at it differently from time to time so that you're touching every claim on a frequent basis.
Don't start at the top of the list every time, right?
No, because you might not make it to the bottom. Exactly.
Right. Sounds good.
Exactly. And
Hey,
then
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, and sometimes too, when we get these large projects, part of our prioritization process is looking at, maybe what isn't likely to pay. I mentioned before that Davis Vision, for example, has a really short timely filing window, and they're not very it's very, very
Flexible.
rare that you can get them to pay. If you submit an appeal and try and prove that you did file it, chances are they're still going to uphold their denial. So sometimes, the process also involves determining, it's not worth chasing those claims. You might be better off writing them off. And that would be a conversation that we would have very closely with the practice and try and understand your priorities.
Sounds good. So, hey, John, sometime you own or manage our credentialing team. Do you and offer sometimes a growing AR is a result of a credentialing issue. Do you guys get involved on that side of things?
We'll get involved if the provider lets us know that there's an issue and they want us to fix it. Sometimes when the biller is doing the aging cleanup or research, they'll figure out that maybe the provider isn't in network or the group isn't, and they'll usually let the provider know, and the provider can decide what to do. And sometimes they'll reach out to us to have us fix the issue for them.
Got it.
Be it demographic or all new credentialing, whatever.
Sounds good. All right, thanks. Let's move on to the patient side of things. So, man, we've talked about the work that we do on the insurance side. Filing, scrubbing claims, filing appeals, AR. On the patient side, can we review kind of that line of responsibility again on the workflow about dealing with the patient aspect? Let's say you get patient responsibility on an EOB. What do we do? What does the practice do? Cover that topic again?
All right, great. With RevCycle Partners, we are always going to post per the EOB and how the payer processed that claim. So, if the patient had paid, a $10 copay at the time of service, and then the payer processes the claim and actually states that their plan had changed at the beginning of the year, and they're actually due a $20 copay, we're going to go ahead and reflect that at the time of posting and transfer that $10 balance difference over to the patient. And anytime we do have to transfer a balance or a credit to the patient, we always use a detailed transfer reason. That will help for the office to then explain to the patient why they may be getting a bill that was unexpected. And I think that's about it on that topic.
Sounds good. So I mean, one aspect of the patient side is the upfront benefits and eligibility. What's the critical information that the practice should be gathering, so that we can more quickly get things paid?
Oh, yes. So, as I mentioned before, data is key. The more data you can prepare for us will allow us to use those resources and do what we need to get that claim processed. So, the most important information would be the copy of the front and the back of the insurance card, all of the demographic information completed for that patient. Also, eligibility and benefits is huge. We really want to make sure that the office is doing eligibility and benefits and verifying that the patient, is eligible for services, does not require, anything else, as well as prior authorizations.
Got it. And I'll just do a little clarification in case anyone has been looking at us for our We Verify service. We do have a separate service from our billing service that takes care of verification, benefits eligibility verification for a practice. And so if we're doing that, we're gathering that information that Amanda is talking about. But if not, then we'd be looking for the practice to obviously get that information. So they are separate services. So I just wanted to clarify that in case it was confusing anyone. Let's move on to communications. A couple of you mentioned that communications is really key to successfully outsourcing your billing. So Melissa, let's talk about who, right? Who are the key contacts in a practice that your team is going to be dealing with and needing to communicate with, and maybe talk about how often. Is this a daily thing, a monthly thing? What's the communication look like?
Absolutely. First, I will apologize. My neighbor has decided to mow his lawn, so I am sorry if you hear that in the background.
The post-COVID background.
Yes. But so I think it's important to have several points of contact in the office if possible. A lot of our current practices, a lot of the practices we currently serve will give us a couple of points of contact, a doctor for any coding issues, a front desk staff member if we have a question, need a card, for example, maybe an office manager if they would rather that, and then perhaps somebody on the optical if you've chosen to outsource your vision service. Just being able to cut out the middleman and go straight to the person that can answer the question will again decrease the turnaround time and increase the I guess decrease the chance of a claim hitting timely because we don't have the information we need.
Yeah. And Amanda, how about the how? That's a weird question. Yeah. What are the ways you guys do communicate? Is it phone? Is it email? I think Melissa alluded to internal rep messaging. What's the preferred way to set up the communication?
Well, the short and sweet answer is all of the above. The preferred communication method is to remain within your practice management system. That is a secure environment, and if we're referencing an individual patient or claim, it's right there available for you to take a look at it and see what question we may have. However, we do have different practices that we may have to send an email, and we would be sure to handle that securely, not provide any direct patient information in that email. But we also have scheduled phone calls. Sometimes our offices just reach out and has a question for us. Sometimes we have monthly meetings or weekly meetings scheduled with the practice, just depending on their needs and their preferences.
Got it. Sounds good. So last topic before we get to questions will be reporting, but I'll remind folks that we're going to do a short Q&A session after we talk a little bit about reporting. So feel free to, if we've, shake out any questions that you might have or ask for deeper clarifications on things. So our last agenda topic is reporting. And man, I think you talked a lot about the data being important. There's a lot of data around the billing topic. And so, Melissa, what type of reports should a practice expect to get from us or any, or another RCM firm, from, if they outsource, what type of data should they be looking for?
Well, any billing vendor should be able to provide the practice with reports that'll allow you to monitor the work being done by the biller and reports that will aid in the work that the practice will need to do in conjunction with the biller. So at RevCycle Partners, we do that in a couple of ways. Every month, we provide a detailed list of all payments that have been applied to the account that fall under the services that we're providing. So you can actually look at that on a monthly basis. Of course, it's always available real time inside of Rev. You can run a receipts report and see it, but we do give that comprehensive view to you once a month. We will also provide you with a detailed spreadsheet of your aging claims. Each month, we actually provide that to you 3 times each month at the beginning of the month to let you know which claims we're targeting. And then about mid-month, you get an update to see it in a snapshot view, the progress we've made and what actions we've taken. If there's anything that is needed from the practice, it'll be highlighted. And then at the end of the month, we give you a summary of the aging claims we worked and again, what actions we took so that you can monitor the progress. Again, that's always available in Rev. We notate all of our work on the actual invoices themselves, but you can, and if you don't want to look at them individually, you can wait for those reports that come 3 times a month. We'll, in addition to those, send some reports just to help you manage your practice. We'll send you your unassigned items to help you make sure that you're actually billing everything that you should be. We'll let you know if your pending invoices are, getting out of control, if you have claims that are just waiting to be authorized so that we can submit them for you. So it's just really important that you're getting data from your billing vendor so that you can monitor them. And if there are additional reports that are needed, we can build custom reports for you inside of Rev EHR that will allow you to see things that we're doing as well if there's something else that you're looking for.
Perfect, thanks. Let's switch into Q&A mode. Again, you should be able to find a questions panel in your GoToWebinar application. It looks like we've got a couple through in here, so feel free to add to that list. Here's some questions for the group. Let me see. Here's one. I think we talked about this a little bit, but maybe not specifically. And the question here is, can we just use RevCycle for medical claims? I'd rather not pay someone else for vision filing. Anybody want to take that one?
Yes, the answer is yes. You can. You can certainly do just your medical, just your vision, both, or again, a subset of payers. If, maybe you're really great at Medicaid and want to keep that, you could always do that if you wanted.
So some customers will keep certain specific payers in-house and we do the rest.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe can you go in a little more detail on maybe when that happens or why a practice might do that?
It's not very frequent. Most practices will, when they choose to outsource, they'll choose to outsource all of their medical, all of their vision. But, again, sometimes you've got a system in place in office that, maybe it's a payer, we'll use one of the VA payers as an example, that's really particular about needing prior auths and wanting claims a certain way and wanting medical records. And sometimes a practice may choose just to keep that in-house because they've got a knowledgeable staff member already. And, it's just easier for them that way. It's not because we won't do it or can't do it or don't know how to do it. They just prefer to keep it.
Perfect. All right, good. Second question is we don't use a clearinghouse. Can I still outsource my billing to you?
Oh, so probably the short answer to that one is no, not really. I mean, we can certainly do some aging cleanup without a clearinghouse, but in order for a really successful relationship with a billing vendor with RevCycle Partners, you really do need to have a clearinghouse. And we could talk to you about that. It would really make your life a lot easier if you do have a clearinghouse. Even if you don't choose to outsource your billing, just to have a clearinghouse.
I'll chime in from the some of the sales conversations we had when we run into a practice that is typically a smaller practice that hasn't done integrated with the clearinghouse. And we recommend that they start with a clearinghouse and based on the efficiencies they gain there, maybe their in-house staff will be able to keep up, right? And so they kind of view that as a first step as people are kind of growing into a larger billing environment. So yeah, definitely we recommend it. Couple questions on pricing. I'll take that. Just general questions on what our pricing schedule is. So for the billing service, we charge 7.5% of net for the medical payers, for the medical claims, and 4.25% for vision only payers, IMED, VSP Davis, those kind of guys. The key aspect about our pricing to understand, especially if you're talking to multiple vendors or looking at multiple options, is understanding what the percentage is set on, and ours is net, right? So anything that we assign to a patient from on an EOB that's patient responsibility, copay, deductible, etc., none of those charges get included in our invoices. None of the adjustments for usual and customary, any of that. It's purely net of what you collect from the payers. So happy to talk about that. Let's see, a couple more here. I'm not quite sure I understand this one, but maybe you guys can just talk a little bit more about vision. The question is, what's an example of vision claims that you do? Did I hear you say you don't do VSP and IMED? Maybe let's just get a clarification on the vision side. What services do we provide, or what service do we provide there?
I can definitely take that one. So what we mean to as the office being responsible for the submission of their standalone vision claims, there are some lab affiliations with payers such as IMED and VSP that, putting in those orders that would still need to remain in-house. There are some things that we do not have access to or to know that information and could potentially cause errors. So it is best to just remain in-house for the submission aspect. But where we step in with the vision side of things is, I think we more or less look at ourselves as a little bit of a safety net. So we're going to be posting those payments, which anybody who has ever applied a large VSP payment knows that is not a fun project sometimes. But we're definitely comfortable with those and interpreting those EOBs. We're going to actually be posting the payments and reconciling those outstanding balances in your practice management system, but also we're going to make sure the patient side of things matches what the payer deems, and adjusting anything that's needed, and talking to the office about filing errors or any confusion that we've seen in that, kind of being that safety net. But we also take care of addressing those claims on the aging standpoint. Once they've reached 45 days, if they have not been submitted, then we can take care of the submissions if it's an exam. But if it has anything to do with glasses, components, we would definitely communicate that to the practice to inform you that that claim had been missed in submission and needs to be processed.
Great. A couple more kind of operational responsibility questions. And this is a good one. Who fields patient phone calls? I'm sorry, who fields patient phone calls for pertaining to statements?
So that actually will remain in-house. We understand the relationship between the office and the patient, and that's something that's very delicate, and we want to remain that way. But as I had mentioned before, with our posting processes, we're going to post how the payer processed that claim and follow the EOB and adjust any balances that are due to the patient or credited to the patient. And at that time, we're going to use a very detailed reason to state, that the copay was different than what was collected or what that reason is. And that will allow the office to explain that charge to the patient. If they call the office and question why they're getting a statement, they'll see our notations and why we transferred it to them so that they can explain that further.
Sounds good. I got one more question, which is looks like it's multiple parts. So as I go through that, we still have although we went long, if anybody wants to add questions, we can always answer them offline as well. I did put up contact information. Feel free to reach out to us at any time. You can obviously find it on a website, or even if you call into Rev, they will forward you over to us. So last questions we have here is, do you bill according to the patient's benefit? Say they have an exam before their routine allowance, do you check what their allowance is? Anyone?
Restate the question, I'm sorry.
Sure. Do you bill according to the patient's benefit? Say they have an exam before their routine allowance, do you check what their allowance is?
So unless you have signed up for the eligibility and benefits service, we don't check eligibility and benefits. So that would remain in the office's responsibility. The office then will create the invoice and assign charges as they deem necessary, as they believe necessary, based on the eligibility and benefits that they pulled. And then we will take the claim over from there. And if the payer comes back saying that, the patient wasn't eligible, we'll look into that and certainly try to figure out where the miscommunication was. And if the payer's wrong, we'll fight that on your behalf.
And the second part of this question is, do you request a DX and referral from the from the doctor when one is needed?
Yeah, so the doctor would always put the diagnoses on the invoice before authorizing it, indicating to us that it's ready to file. And if a referral is needed, hopefully the office catches that during the eligibility and benefits process and uploads it into the chart. We'll search for it in the documents and images. And if it's not there, the claim gets denied, we will message the office using the task or message feature to get that backdated referral if possible.
Sounds good. And I'm going to squeeze one last one that came in because it's really not a topic we've hit. So I thought it'd be a good one to add. Is how far do you usually go in terms of proper coding, proper in quotes? Do you do any reviews with that? So maybe, maybe talk about, what we do in the scrubbing perspective relative to the coding side of things. And then we'll call it a wrap.
Mm-hmm. So we will look for common issues or common mistakes, both just in general in billing and then perhaps within the practice themselves. So we'll make sure that if it's a medical claim, it's got medical diagnoses on it. If it is needing a modifier, let's say it's a cataract co-management claim, we'll make sure all of the modifiers and all of the additional details that are needed, such as relinquish and assumption dates, that all of those are on there. If you're trying to bill, a fundus photo and an OCT on the same day, we'll look for support in the chart to indicate that both should be done, and then attach the modifier accordingly. And then if something is denied, let's say for non-medical necessity, after the claim is processed, we will provide education back to the office. We'll give you the LCD or the payer guidelines from the manual that help you understand which diagnoses do qualify, and try and get that claim resubmitted if possible for you.
Perfect. Great. And I think with that, we'll call it a wrap. Apologize, we went a little bit long, but I don't mind going long on the the questions. So that's good. So again, thanks for everyone attending. We will be sending out a link to this recording. You'll get that in the next day or two. Feel free to share it amongst your team and your peers. If you have any questions or any interest in digging in deeper, we're obviously happy to chat and get on calls with you guys. I'd like to thank all the panelists. Thanks for taking time out of your day as well. I know you guys are all busy, so we appreciate that as well. So thanks everyone. Have a great day and stay safe.